The GPS DairyCAST features the high-value insights of the GPS Dairy Consulting team's trusted advisors and the owners and managers from the elite dairy farms they serve. These conversations deliver on the GPS Dairy Consulting promise to inspire change and grow leaders.
Welcome to the GPS DairyCAST. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen from the Up-Level Dairy Podcast, and we bring you this episode from the 2026 GPS Herd Manager Retreats, where elite herd managers gather among their peers to share ideas, best practices, and to hear from the experts and GPS team members who are leading the industry. On this episode, GPS consultant Jordan Hunt joins Dr. Richard Stup from Cornell University to discuss what he believes it takes to be successful as a leader looking to enhance team performance. Modern dairy cow diets demand precision with amino acids at the core. Lysine and methionine aren't just essential for milk and milk protein production, they play key roles in cow health, reproduction, and long-term profitability. Backed by 35 years of expertise in rumen-protected technologies, Kemin's Lysogem Extend and Kescent ME deliver the latest in rumen-protected lysine and methionine to support precise diet formulation, improve ROI, and boost overall cow performance. Learn more at kemin.com/dairy.
Good morning, Rich, and thanks for being with us. We appreciate the time. If you wouldn't mind, start off just with a brief introduction of yourself to our audience.
Oh, great. Thanks, Jordan. I'm glad to be here with you. My name is Richard Stup. I'm with Cornell University. I lead a program there called Cornell Agricultural Workforce Development. We do a lot of work on regulatory compliance, both state and federal. We do a lot of work on leadership and management development. That's what we'll focus on here today.
Yeah.
But then also workforce development, as in, hey, where's the workforce coming from, in the future years, 2 years, 5 years down the road? And so that's another important question as well.
Very important.
My background is in workforce development. I have a PhD in that field from Penn State University, and I've worked in agriculture my whole life, grew up on a farm. I've worked in academia at Penn State and at Cornell, and then have also worked in the financial side of the industry.
Yeah, very good. So if you wouldn't mind, give a high-level overview of your presentation today that you presented at our herd manager retreat, and as the title, Leading for Performance.
Yeah, we're going to focus on that today. And again, a big passion of mine is teaching leadership, because we have so many people working in our industry who really haven't had a background, haven't had an opportunity to get any training in leadership. Hey, maybe if people had the opportunity to go to college and study dairy science, perhaps, usually they haven't had the opportunity there to understand what does it take to be an effective supervisor? Right. What does it take to lead people? In the farm setting, then we've got people often that are really good, maybe through experience or education at the production side of the business. They know their way around the cow really well, but when it comes to leading people, they struggle. And if you're in that situation where you're a great performer as an individual on doing tasks and getting work done, and then you get that first promotion, you become a supervisor the first time, pretty quickly you realize that this is a whole different ballgame. And getting work done through other people is very different than just doing that work myself. So people fall back into some of those habits that let them be successful as an individual performer, and they often don't learn the skills that it takes to be successful as a leader of people. So we're going to jump into the essentials of leading people.
If you had to maybe rank those priorities, what would be the main ones that come to mind?
That's a great question. I've been teaching in this area and working with farms in this area for going on 25 years now. And so I've had the opportunity to put a lot of thought into it, to learn from a lot of others that have been successful with it, and have my own experiences in leadership as well. Mm-hmm. And I had kind of boiled it down to three things that I believe make up about 80% of what it takes to be successful. And we call that the Performance Triad. And Performance Triad has three pieces to it, right? So the first piece is setting clear expectations. And so often we think we've done that, but if I go into a farm and I talk to management and I talk to the employees and I ask them, so what are the most important things for you to be doing? What are the expectations for you? I'll get different answers a lot of times. The principle of this is that if I'm clear about my expectations, then guess what? It makes it a lot easier for the people that are following me to be able to do those, to perform at the level and in the way that I really want them to perform. So that's kind of the foundation, is clear expectations. And we've got tools, we've got job descriptions, we've got standard operating procedures and things like that. Tools like that we use to establish what those expectations are.
Yep.
So then the second leg is training and development. And I use that term, sometimes I'll just say training, but it's anything that we do to help a person develop the knowledge, skills, and somewhat attitudes that we need in order for them to be successful in doing that job. Because, I mean, let's face it, you need to have the knowledge and skills to do whatever the job is. So that could be on-the-job training. And more often than not, that's exactly what it is, on-the-job training. We're going to have someone, maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's the supervisor, do the training to help this person develop the skills they need to be effective in that job. Sometimes that's it. Sometimes it is sending them out to a meeting. GPS Dairy Consulting is having a meeting. You know, an industry organization. Maybe it's extension where there's an opportunity for them to learn. Maybe it's other opportunities. Maybe it's rotating them into different jobs within the dairy in order to get some experience.
Bigger picture view
exactly.
of it.
Exactly. Those things are so critical. But whatever we do to get the training for the knowledge and skills, and again, somewhat attitudes that are needed for them to be successful. And then the third leg of the Performance Triad is feedback. And when I say feedback, a lot of dairies do an annual performance review, right? And that's fine. And as long as you're doing it, that's a good idea. But if that's the only way that people are getting feedback about their performance, it doesn't work because it's not frequent enough. We get into feedback and giving effective performance feedback. So feedback, if you think about it, is kind of the directions. It kind of helps people to know how they're performing. If they're off track and need to get with the program and know how to do it in the right way for this farm, or if they're at the beginner level and they could get to the intermediate level and it's maybe coaching them a little bit to get to that next level of feedback. But it's always giving them direction, constant feedback about how they're performing so they can either get better or perform at a higher level. And we'll get into the technicalities of that in the presentation in a considerably more detail, but the feedback issue, I think it's the most powerful tool that a supervisor or leader has because they can directly shape an employee's performance, right? So if I say, hey, you're doing a great job with that. These are the things that are going really well, things that you're doing really quite well. Then that employee is more than likely going to repeat that and keep doing it and maybe do it at a higher level. If I tell a person, hey, you know what, I saw you doing it this way, and the procedure is actually that way. Let's talk about the difference there. This is not punishment at this point. This is just what we call redirective feedback, helping someone get back on track. If I have a conversation like that, I can bump that person right back on track and they'll likely stay there.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of tools of feedback that can, again, directly shape employees' performance.
Yeah, there's a lot there. There really is. It's awesome stuff. If you don't mind, I'd like to kind of go back to the first one, right? Mm-hmm. And concise communication to the team, right? Farms that do that really well versus not, what really separates them? What is it that they're doing that makes them so good at that part of leading for performance?
That's a great question. Let me give you the short answer. Communication. Now, people always say communication, and it is communication that really matters. And in some ways, everything we've talked about so far is
communication
one form
related.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's take a deeper dive. Let's dig into that a little bit more. Communication about what and how frequently, how often. A lot of times we haven't gotten to that level of organization in our dairies. So let's think about that. If we want to have a really effective reproduction program on this dairy, we know from the science side and the management side that there's some critical areas, some things that we can measure, some tasks that we need to do and do consistently in order for that to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And we can lay those things out, and we can teach individuals that are involved with it how to do that. And we can be talking with them about that on a consistent basis. So those dairies, I think, that are really effective at having clear expectations have taken the time to get themselves organized, to really focus on what are the key things that we have to do really well.
Yep.
And then they communicate about those on a consistent basis. Sometimes it's as frequently as daily meetings.
Sure.
And a daily meeting doesn't have to be long. Literally can be 5 minutes or even less. If it's a one-on-one, it can just be a minute or two even. But pulling the teams together, I'm not necessarily recommending a daily meeting, although it works for lots
Sure.
of people. If I'm the supervisor and I'm working closely with my team, at least on a weekly basis, I'm touching base. And you know what? It shouldn't be a surprise what's in those meetings. A lot of times that agenda should be brief and should be things that we're already talking about, because those are the core areas. What could we do better? What went well? What went wrong? And just communicating about those things all the time. And that gives you that opportunity to refocus on what the expectations are. I've talked a lot about the production side of things, right? So like the work. But there's also setting expectations about things like team behaviors, right? A lot of times things get off track in a dairy because we got some conflict going on, or this guy doesn't like that guy. You know, if you worked in any organization, it's there, and you need to deal with that. And leaders need to lead in that area too. They need to be clear about, hey, this is how we treat each other at work. We help each other, we support each other, we build each other up, we don't tear each other down.
Great.
And if you set that kind of an environment, set that kind of an expectation, then that's what the culture will be, and people will follow that culture.
You know, great points, and be treated the way you would want to be treated type of concept, right? And the other thing I want to circle back on, oftentimes we think meetings need to be like this big grandioso thing, right, and really long, and it's a perfect reminder that 5 to 10 minutes can go a long ways. I see a lot of protocols on farms put up outside the parlor or different areas, and I often wonder, after the first few days of being onboarded, how often are those actually revisited? And that's where those short meetings can be a great opportunity, right, to like touch base on some of the key things, or the cameras are picking up a little bit of protocol drift, like let's talk about it as a group and get everyone involved. So
For sure.
Yeah, those are great pointers.
And again, back to that meeting, that, as you mentioned there, a lot of times the leaders struggle because they're thinking, well, I got to come up with what we're going to talk about. I got to come up with what the agenda is. No, you don't have to. It should be mostly a standing agenda. We're going to talk about A, B, and C because we always talk about A, B, and C. And we're looking at the numbers around A, B, and C. Once in a while, we're going to talk about D, and something special will come up. But for the most part, our meetings are standard, and we're talking about the work. We're talking about potentially how we're doing as a team and things like that. And it shouldn't be a big burden on leaders to have these kind of consistent meetings.
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want to learn more about GPS Dairy Consulting, make sure to join our email list. Our announcements aren't just for GPS clients, but instead for anyone looking to advance their dairy business. Learn more about GPS and take a deeper dive into dairy farming hot topics. Stay in the loop with our once-weekly emails and have all GPS DairyCAST podcasts, blog posts, event announcements, and monthly newsletters sent straight to your inbox. You can join the GPS email list by clicking the link in the show notes.
So all these aspects interconnect, right? So when you bring up maybe protocol drift, well, that segues into number 2, right? And training and learning. So what are things that you think farms should do within the training and learning? What is like an appropriate cadence on frequency of training sessions, right?
Yeah.
Even for established employees, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Everybody is familiar with training. We all think we know training, right?
Maybe a little bit of an eye roll, right?
Right. But a lot of times we haven't really thought that much about what is training, how should it be conducted, how can it be more effective, and how frequently should it be. And we also misuse training. So we sometimes try to use training in ways to solve some human performance problems that are not effective because it's not a training issue. So let me get back to your initial question there, and that is the cadence of training, how frequently it should happen. Of course, we should have onboarding, right? So
Absolutely.
we should have a plan for how we're going to onboard people, new employees. We should know what the expectations are, what the metrics are we're going to be looking at. They should know who their boss is going to be, who their supervisor is, which is not always clear. That supervisor should know what that new employee is being trained on and how. We should have a person doing that onboarding. If it's not the supervisor, someone that's qualified to do that training and actually wants to do the training, wants to do a good job. Sometimes we put people in a position of being trainer that don't want to be trainer or aren't good at it. And we should think through that part of it. So it should be organized. It should be planned what the training is. We should be able to help those new people get up to speed as quickly as possible through our onboarding. That being said, once onboarding is done, we're not done with training forever. Right. Reality is, we're going to onboard typically for most frontline dairy jobs. It's going to be a couple days at the beginning. But we need to come back with that new person, certainly within a week. I would say within 1 week and then again at a month to make sure that we're revisiting and reinforcing that. It also gives us an opportunity. When someone is brand new and they're learning, we're basically teaching the what, that this is what you do. And we overload them if we try to get into the why too much. So save some of that why for that week. Couple of weeks in, so they begin to get that deeper understanding. Oh, this is why it's done that way. And if you do that, then you have the what and the why are both important. I'm just saying that we need to do the what up front so they can be effective in their job. So that's multiple touch points of training with that new employee. But let's say we've got an existing team that's working away and doing the same job year in, year out. I think that they ought to be having a refresher training at least twice a year. Sure. So like every 6 months, and you'll be surprised at how fast 6 months goes by. And again, that refresher training doesn't have to be an all-day thing, right? It can be 20 minutes, a half an hour to revisit on some of those things. People, regardless of what job they're doing, they like to understand more about what they're doing. So it is helpful to sometimes bring different people to come in and help out with that training. Not every time necessarily. The supervisor often or a manager can do that. But if we can have the veterinarian come in and reinforce some of this, or one of the consultants that come in and reinforce why this is important, how it fits with other parts of the dairy, that can help change up the training a little bit, as long as we make sure that our core principles, our core practices remain consistent and on target for what the dairy wants. Yep. So yeah, just keep it on a regular basis and don't let it go. A year is a very long time.
Sure.
So 6 months or so, that's probably more appropriate for that ongoing training for current employees.
So within this triad number 2, we talk about training and development. What is the real difference between training and development?
Yeah, it's hard to draw a totally bright line between the two because there certainly is overlap. But training is ordinarily more of a focus on tasks that are repeatable. So you might train a person to milk cows. You might train a person to operate the skid loader. You might train a person to pull a financial report or a herd management report because it's a repeatable task that they're doing. Development is more of a longer-term thought process, is more of a longer-term effort, and it's helping people to develop a set of skills that they're going to use in a less predictable way going forward. So the classical example is developing a new leader, a new supervisor.
Sure.
So I can train someone to milk cows, but I need to work with them, coach them, develop them over time with some experiences from the actual job in order to really be effective as a leader. If I'm going to be working with someone that's going to be higher level, a herd manager or something, and I want them ultimately to run this new site that I've purchased, right? There's going to be a lot of things that are not real predictable, and they're going to need to be developed over time to have the thought processes, the ability to think deeper about this, think a couple of steps down the road. It's things that they're going to need to apply their own knowledge and judgments, those things that can develop over time with experiences and with the supportive training and coaching from others. So that's the difference. Again, it's not clear-cut, but training is more tasks that are repeatable, and development is more applying knowledge to things that are less predictable and usually more complex.
Yeah, great explanation. Appreciate that. So as we go into the third triad of feedback, kind of reinforcement, what are ways that leaders on our farms, managers, can be more effective at providing feedback to their employees?
Feedback is a habit, right? Let me start with there's multiple types of feedback. I can give positive feedback, which is just encouragement, reinforce what someone's doing already. I can give redirective feedback, again, which is not punishment, which is helping get someone back on track or get to the next level, to go from where I am now to where I need to be. I can use punishment or negative feedback. And I need to have that tool in my toolbox, right? Because sometimes an employee or person is willfully doing something wrong. It's not because they don't know how to do it. If they don't know how to do it, then I use training, right? And I teach them or coach them how to do that. If they're choosing to not follow procedure, or they're choosing to be a problem within the team, then at some point I need to be able to come in and say, look, if you continue that behavior, there's going to be consequences. The ultimate consequence is that you can't work here anymore. So I need to have punishment in my set of tools. But the most common form of feedback is no feedback. It's ignoring. And I always like to tell people, okay.
It doesn't sound like a good thing.
It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing, because what message is that sending to our employees? The message it's sending is that your work's really not very important, or I really don't care how you do that work. If that's a message you want to send, well, that's up to you. But I'd rather, as a leader, take control of what messages I'm sending, reinforce the good parts, and redirect the parts that I need to see at a different level.
So, Rich, what's the purpose between feedback and reviews?
Yeah. So if we think about it, it's all feedback, right? So the more formal performance reviews, and when I say that, I'm thinking about, there might be a piece of paper involved. Maybe we're giving something more formal like that, but we're definitely sitting down between a leader and an employee and having a conversation about their performance in a more formal setting. That would be a performance review. Classically, that's the annual performance review, something like that. So again, what I said before is that if that's the only form of feedback, that's a real problem. And let me explain that some more. So feedback, one of the principles of feedback is that the more frequent it is, the better, right? So think about it from the employee's perspective. I'm going along, I'm doing something wrong, doing it wrong every day, or maybe multiple times a week or whatever. You're my boss, and you don't say anything to me until I'm at my annual review. And then, I'm essentially in trouble because I've been doing it wrong. I know this is an extreme example.
Right.
And I'm like, well, why didn't you tell me 9 months ago when I was doing it wrong? So I'm just illustrating the point there that employees want to know. If they're off track, they want to get on track. Most people don't come to work wanting to do things wrong, right? They want to perform well, and they want to be a good part of the team and stuff like that. So part of the leader's job is to give them feedback and let them know how they're doing and how the leader feels about their performance and what the numbers are saying about their performance and things like that.
Maybe some of that feedback and insights can also help them do their job more effectively and efficiently.
For sure.
To save them a little bit of time as well, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. And so feedback should be, if I'm a direct supervisor and I'm working with a team in our industry, of course, a lot of times that direct supervisor is also there in the trenches helping to get the work done. Feedback should be daily. I've seen an effective supervisor that whenever they walk by, when they're in the presence of some of their employees, they're constantly talking with them, encouraging them, giving some feedback. When you have an environment like that with a positive supervisor that's not yelling at people and giving a bunch of negative feedback, but encouraging, coaching all the time, that's a very healthy environment. Employees like to work in that environment, and they stay in that kind of an environment. So feedback can be daily. It should be at least weekly. Every employee, I believe, should at least weekly have some input. And again, this can be 15 seconds, saying, hey, you're doing a great job with that. Keep it up. I really like how you did that. That constant flow, sometimes daily, often at least weekly, just to keep that flow going with every employee. And that changes the performance review then. So if I do an annual or a semi-annual performance review, then everything that happens in that should simply be a review.
Sure.
So the employees, if I'm doing the formal performance review, doing a good job with it, there should never be a surprise, because we've already been talking about everything that's in there, good and bad, right? So if they're doing really good in this area and they're still struggling in this area, they should know that you're going to talk about it when you come in, because you've already been talking about it. And just think of the principle. I can't do anything with feedback if you don't give it to me, right? And I, as the employee, and you as the supervisor, you want to see me perform at a high level, because if I perform at a high level, it makes you look good, right? And you're performing at a high level. And so supervisors, leaders need to give feedback to their employees on a consistent basis. And I'm going to add to that a little bit. There's, of course, lots of people that are frontline supervisors, and that's the first transition. You go from performing as an individual to leading a small team for the first time. A lot of our dairy managers, farm owners, right, and senior dairy managers, even if they're not owners, have other supervisors working for them. That's another transition that isn't discussed a whole lot. And that group has a whole different set of skills in addition to. So it becomes less training and more coaching and support of those frontline supervisors. That frontline supervisor job or middle manager job in many cases can be a lonely job, right? Because you're not quite one of the guys anymore. You're not the farm owner. You're this person that's in the middle.
Yep.
And our owners and senior managers need to be supporting those middle managers, coaching them, talking to them when they're having some trouble maybe with an employee, thinking through some different ideas and things like that. But again, it's feedback for those middle managers and helping them to be successful in their job, holding them accountable for actually doing the leadership parts of their job. A lot of frontline supervisors fail, as we started out talking about, because they're trying to do what they did as an individual performer, and they're not doing the leadership tasks that they need to be doing, like training, expectations, and feedback.
Well, Rich, this was a great conversation and really appreciate all the insights this morning. Is there a place that, if someone's wanting to look up more information that they could go as follow-up to the conversation day on leading for performance?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you asking that. It's been great being here with you. You can always check out our website, which is agworkforce.cornell.edu. And on there, look for supervisory leadership. We have online courses in agricultural supervisory leadership. They're fully online, and it is primarily farm managers from all around the country that participate in that. And we get into a lot of depth in some of the topics we talked about today and a whole lot of other things that leaders of people need to know on farms.
Very good. Thanks again, Rich.
You're very welcome.
Modern dairy cow diets demand precision with amino acids at the core. Lysine and methionine aren't just essential for milk and milk protein production, they play key roles in cow health, reproduction, and long-term profitability. Backed by 35 years of expertise in rumen-protected technologies, Kemin's Lysogem Extend and Kescent ME deliver the latest in rumen-protected lysine and methionine to support precise diet formulation, improve ROI, and boost overall cow performance. Learn more at kemin.com/dairy. You just heard from GPS dairy consultant Jordan Hunt and Dr. Richard Stup from Cornell University here on the GPS DairyCast. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen from the Up-Level Dairy Podcast, and we look forward to you joining again for our next episode right here on the GPS DairyCast.
The GPS DairyCast features conversations that deliver on the GPS Dairy Consulting promise to inspire change and grow leaders. If this GPS DairyCast has you looking for more ways to become an elite dairy producer, find more information in our show notes on how you can add a GPS advisor to your team.